Black Myth Wukong is unlike any other game I've played this year. Why is that? What's so special about this game compared to the others, especially considering we've had absolute titans released this year like Helldivers 2, some of the most multiplayer fun I've had in recent memory with incredible funny moments, clutch clips, and literal explosive fun. Or things like Enshrouded, one of the most in-depth crafting and building survival games I've ever played next to Minecraft itself. It brought back such nostalgia while also feeling like a massive story-driven RPG rather than just a building sandbox. We also can't forget titles like Palworld, where millions of players, including myself, were saying this is the kind of game they've always wanted from Pokemon. Genuinely an amazing game with exploration, survival, and pulling off what honestly looked like an absolute meme to one of the heights of early 2024. Then, of course, the first Descendant, which was one of my most anticipated games this year. After playing a plethora of the betas leading up to the actual launch, fighting all the bosses, progressing an actual story, and learning how and where to farm the best stuff to absolutely deck the halls with your build. And honestly, my favorite of all of these is Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2, my first ever experience with the 40k series, and what it looked like to stare hordes of Tyranids straight in the face with pure malice in your eyes. The finishers were gruesome, yet so satisfying. The story, although somewhat shorter than I had hoped, offered incredible cutscenes, and the gameplay itself backed the insane level of detail we all hoped would be present. It's safe to say it stomped its way out of the park. And of course, there have been a metric ton of titles I didn't even mention that were all incredible in their own way. So now this brings us to Black Myth Wukong. Why, oh why, is this game so good and my pick for the 2024 Game Awards? Well, for starters, this is a game I've had in my sights as far back as 2019-2020, and I wanted to play it so bad, as my only experience with anything Wukong by this point was Sun Wukong in Smite and Wukong in Epic Games Paragon. But it seemed like the release date would get pushed further and further off, so eventually it just became a distant thought. Maybe we'll see Black Myth Wukong one day, who knows. Flashback to December 11th, 2023. I got an email close to 3 a.m. on this random Monday in December, and knowing me, I was probably still up around that time. The email contained a message along the lines of, "Hi, my name is John, and I work for so-and-so who is working on the upcoming title Black Myth Wukong." They went on to mention my interest and insight on The Witcher 3, and it just so happens that right around this time, I was uploading a weekly playthrough series of the game, so that checked out. They also mentioned my passion for community, so I thought, okay, this isn't some random scammer, at least I didn't think so, but I was still hesitant. Now, the main reason they contacted me was because they had mentioned they were running a survey to get insights from gamers on what was truly important, in their opinion, for an action-adventure RPG style of game. Still a bit hesitant, I sent it over to my buddy who I discuss all things sponsorships or possibly brand opportunities with. He then looked it over and, to my surprise, responded with something along the lines of, "Hey, wait, this is real, man. The company is real, and this could be an actual opportunity to get in contact with the devs at some point." So I said, okay, well shoot, let me reply. I ended up replying, and this John guy and I went back and forth for a few emails. I filled out the survey on what I thought was truly important in an action-adventure RPG style of game, and then I waited and waited and waited some more, and nothing came of that possible opportunity. I went on to virtually forget all about it and then played the games I mentioned earlier in order of when they released. I had an absolute blast with all of those games, and some I played more than others. I even made some videos, both short form and long form, based off some of these titles, but I was kind of just passing time, playing what was new and moving on to the next. This brings us all the way up to June 10th, 2024. Jeff Keighley was hosting the Summer Game Fest, and at some point during the show, we were greeted by this incredibly high-rendered cinematic of Wukong getting ready to stand on business against the world itself. I was already so unbelievably excited for the game, as by this point, we actually had a release date of August 20th, so seeing Wukong in this cinematic only furthered my hype and hope for it living up to everything I had dreamed across all of these years that I had waited. And now it's finally the day. August 19th has arrived. We were going to be able to play really late into the day before the actual launch date. I figured I would just do my normal stream earlier in the day, and then I would prep a second stream so that I could check out Black Myth Wukong the moment it released. And now, over the course of a 2-hour play session, I was shocked at the level of quality. From the very opening moment, seeing the title screen immediately transition seamlessly into a cutscene, I was hooked and eagerly waiting for what was going to happen next. After another cutscene, it blended effortlessly right into gameplay, and boy was it such a smooth segue. As I continued to play and explore, I found myself actually invested in the lore and wanting to know all that was happening in this world and with its characters, which is kind of new for me because although I do read lore notes, sometimes, I don't care too often, and it's only a very specific game that actually has my attention enough to do it. I found myself learning about bosses I was just about to face, and every encounter felt fresh. In that 2-hour play session, I was able to find and fight the first 4 bosses of Chapter 1, and I was surprised at how close the bosses seemed to each other, as normally, in my experience, you have to do a specific timely quest or explore much larger amounts of the world before you can actually find the next boss. With Black Myth Wukong, it felt like I was in a new fight and trying to adapt to a new moveset every 10 to 12 minutes. And now, yes, of course, into the later chapters, this did develop into 15 to 25 minutes from time to time, but I was still super excited that I could fight a new boss soon after the last. Now, since this is more of a boss rush style of game, you may think that many of the bosses are just throwaway thugs with a boss health bar, or maybe they're a reskin of a previous boss. But no, basically all of them were super unique. And if I remember correctly, only one boss was an actual reskin, but even in that, it had a full mechanic that the other did not. I'm of course talking about the Wandering White and the Elder Jinchi. Personally, I've never read Journey to the West, nor have I seen any of the movie adaptations of Wukong, but something just clicked with me so much in this game. Although I didn't have much of any previous knowledge of the character or the world he's venturing through, all I knew was I wanted to keep playing day after day. Something seriously had me hooked. As it stands, only a few bosses gave me a genuine hard time, and I'm interested to hear if any of these bosses were difficult for you too, so please let me know in the comments down below. First off was the Wandering White. Although very early into the game and only taking me out 4 times, I felt some level of excitement and fear while fighting this boss. You could probably guess the next one, Tiger Vanguard from Chapter 2. And yes, I'm talking about the actual Tiger Vanguard, not this quotation goober. His Rivers of Blood attack, the freaking rocket punch he does as he cloud steps after Rock Solid, and his Katana Slash all proved to be incredibly devastating attacks that put me on my buns a total of 5 times. I thought, aye man, you can have 5, but no more. And with a little bit more patience and focus, this Titan fell. And that's another thing too. When you first played Black Myth Wukong, did you notice the insane height of basically every boss you were fighting? At first, I thought it was just some weird camera angle thing or FOV issue, but no. Wukong's opponents just actually are that tall. He's literally a one-man army in a 4-foot tall package that confidently solos mountains, and that just made him so much cooler to me. The next boss that gave me issues was Black Long. This is the first secret boss of Chapter 2. He got me a full 12 times, and mainly because I, for one, was bad at dodging, but also 2, didn't realize you could actually just stand on a rock during his massive AoE slam attacks. Of course, as long as he didn't break the rocks prior to this. And come to think of it, honestly, doesn't this kind of just seem like something Wukong would do? Now, of course, we can't forget the biggest op of Chapter 2, Yellow Wind Sage. That dude had so many players tweaking, and I'd imagine an innocent keyboard or 2 were snapped in the process of that fight. He officially got me 13 times before I could burst him down enough to get the dub, which again, felt like moving a mountain. But nobody, up until this point, posed such a challenge as the Yin Tiger. This pure unit of mass put me on the bench 24 times. I had to hear this dude tell me that I was not as strong as the real Wukong 24 times. You can imagine when I actually beat him.
I have never known defeat.
But now, if I'm going to be talking about bosses, Yellow Long, we still got beef, homeboy. I'm still upset about the 18 rips and the 27 combo attacks I had to perfect dodge, otherwise I'd lose 75% of my HP. I was finally able to put him down, but man, that dude is rough to fight. But now, this leads me to Wukong himself, the fight of all fights, and easily my biggest challenge across 70 hours of playtime. The fight was so challenging that I ripped not only 20 or 30 or 40, but 41 times before I finally was able to take his title. And yes, in the process of doing that, I unfortunately got the bad ending. So now I am Wukong, sealed away in a rock on a mountain for, well, ever, I guess. And now seeing the credits roll finally, I just excitedly sighed and I said, I got him. No big scream, no crazy gestures or laser eye effects, just simply, I got him. It felt like such a peaceful end to a wonderful 70-hour journey, something I hadn't really felt in the other games I had played that also released this year. It really took me back to beating The Witcher 3 again. Although The Witcher 3 is a massive open world game, I felt that same level of accomplishment and excitement. Plus, there was a wonderful story unfolding before my eyes, a story that I had never experienced, and I'll go out on a limb here, probably most of the players that played Black Myth Wukong haven't experienced it either. That's something that made Black Myth Wukong feel so special. To many of us, it felt new. But in feeling new for me, I came to the realization that this character is deep rooted in hundreds of years of history. Among all the games I've played in my life, Black Myth Wukong is also the only game I've ever started a New Game Plus on. Why? Well, every story-based or open world or just whichever kind of game it was that I was playing at the time, if it did offer a New Game Plus option, I just always chose to start from scratch, as if I was playing the game for the first time again. But now that I'm in Chapter 3, and smashing through the boss fights, I get why New Game Plus is so fun. And honestly, because of this, I might just have to return to some of my favorite games and play New Game Plus on them as well. Black Myth Wukong is my game of the year because it takes me back to simpler times, when games were just games, a vehicle of fun for us to drive as long as we wanted. And of course, that doesn't exclude the dramas and controversies that Black Myth Wukong has gone through, but whether they are real or fake, it just felt like something that truly allowed you to disconnect from the world, rather than remind you of just how bad or crazy things have been. Something that said, hey, just put your headphones on and escape for a bit. Although it's primarily a boss rush style of game, I actually felt invested and wanted to know more. And now, I actually want to read Journey to the West as well. And I'll honestly probably even check out some of the Wukong movies too. And that's all I got to say about that. Your time is incredibly valuable, so thank you very much for spending any of it watching and or listening to me explain my experience with Black Myth Wukong and why it wins Game of the Year for me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Black Myth Wukong and, of course, your Game of the Year if it is not Black Myth Wukong down in the comments. So I'll see you there, but also I'll see you in the next Black Myth Wukong video. And I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, Destined One.